listening to the Otasso Outdoors Podcast.
Do.
Do. Oh, harmonization.
Almost harmonized.
How far away is Doug?
Doug is less than 1 yard away.
Guys, welcome back to the Otasso Outdoors Podcast. I'm Caleb. I'm your host, and I am joined by one of my co-hosts this evening, Reed Robinson.
Howdy.
If you are tuning into the show for the first time, you're likely to find one of three segments. Segment number one is What You Got, Buddy? What You Got, Buddy is where we will bring headlines, articles ahead of time, and then discuss them at length. Segment number two
is our Spotlight series where we search our network in the hunting industry. We find guests to bring down into the PodBunker, have a conversation with them, and bring you guys along for the ride. Segment number three is our head-to-head series. That is our game show / trivia, where one of us, as the games are, bring some pre-prepared questions, and then the other members of the PodBunker battle it out and go head-to-head to see who knows more, and then we crown a victor at the end. This is neither of those three segments. Nope.
Guys, we've been really impromptu on this one. This is fun, actually. Our big special guest in the PodBunker tonight, Mr. Doug Gough, and he brought along his buddy, Conner Gough, with Great Lakes Guided Outdoors. Why don't you give us a little bit of an intro on your friend here? This is the first canine species we ever had in the PodBunker with us.
First non-human.
And probably the first British person.
That's true.
Oh.
He's from over the pond.
He was born
Hello.
overseas.
Pip, pip, cheerio, Dougie.
When he barks, he's got an accent.
Oi, 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 oi. See, he looked at me.
He's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah, I think he sees right through me.
He's like, that is the worst accent I've ever heard.
Anyway, Conner swung in for an impromptu episode on the way back up from Florida. Why don't you give a little spark notes of what you've been working on the last couple months? Last time you were up here was February.
Yeah, so we hit it February 6th. I think I was in the PodBunker with you guys, and we dropped a quick episode. Well, it wasn't quick. That was a long episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's going to be like 5 episodes apart.
Yeah, that was a long episode, but we had a really good chat there. I enjoyed it last time, and I was just rolling north. I said, hey, what do you guys got going on next week? And within a couple days, we planned it out, made a quick stop, and upcoming turkey season, I think it's time to talk about some turkeys.
So as our resident guide, like the guy who knows all things about birds and everything, that's why we really wanted to dive into turkey hunting specifically this evening, because Conner is what one would consider an expert in the turkey woods. You're wearing a shirt with a turkey claw on it. I mean, we've been thinking about this. We talked about this on the last What You Got, Buddy, about when you kill a bird, if they toss like the claws, we want to taxidermy, have it be our trophy for our head-to-head of just 2 turkey claws doing this.
Yeah.
I think that would be really, really fun to have down here.
I got the legs sitting in the freezer. We can do it like next week.
Let's do
We
it.
just got get a little embalming kit. Just get them all, like they've been sitting in the fridge. I don't know how you would taxidermy them, but
There's not a whole lot of stinky stuff in the legs, really. I mean, if you get them fresh, you can dry them whatever pose you want.
I think that's probably where I guess if I thawed it out, it'd probably be ready to rock, and then just let it dry out in the sun.
Maybe a little borax.
Just tie them off into the shape and then put a nice little mahogany base on them or something.
Sure. Yeah, we can make that.
I love it. My mind's going multiple different ways now with things we can do.
Right,
with
and I'm
it.
trying to think of what we're going to put on the plaque on the bottom.
Right.
Anyways.
Anyway, down here in the bunker, we have Mr. Doug. Why don't you tell the listeners who this awesome dog is?
So Doug is a 3-year-old British Lab of the black lab variety. He typically spends his fall and winter months retrieving ducks and geese all across the country. Travels with me. We start out in Michigan doing the goose hunts up here, September, October, and then head to Oklahoma for the rest of the winter months, November, December, January, till the end of season. he definitely has his work cut out for him a lot of days. So he's a working boy, that is for sure, but he loves his job.
I absolutely love it. And we were playing with him in the yard for a while. We had this little decoy toy, and we would whip it, and this dog does not know how to turn off.
Yeah, he won't quit. If you keep throwing it, he will keep going. He loves it.
He's just go, go, go.
So,
well, the second you let him out of the truck, I mean, he's just on the hunt for whatever he can find. I mean, you can tell he is always on. The second he's out of his place, he is on the hunt for looking for whatever it is, whether he's looking to jump rabbits or he's looking for critters to get on, or if he's looking for something that's down, like he is just in and on it.
I think the nicest thing too, not only the high drive and being ready and raring to work all the time is nice, but my favorite is his off switch. We spend a lot of days and long hours in the truck, either scouting or traveling. And as soon as he's in the truck, pretty much once it's in gear, he's sleeping. And then when I run charter trips, I take him on the boat every day, either him or Selah. I'll usually flip-flop dogs, just take one at a time on the boat. And whatever cushion on the boat I stick them on up at the helm with me or up on the front cushion, they'll sit there the whole trip until we go back to the dock. And then when I say it's time, they'll jump off and run up and go to the bathroom. And then they're like, all right, time to go back on the boat.
I love it.
It's awesome.
With a higher energy dog like this, do you prefer that, or do you prefer a more laid back dog?
I mean, every dog's different and has their own temperament, disposition, however you want to say it. So obviously there's no two dogs that are exactly the same. There's definitely a fine line though between a dog that has too much energy and, you know, it's like they're a million miles an hour. It's harder to run a dog like that because a lot of times they're going to overrun something, or you really have to be able to anticipate where you're going to have to correct them, because if you don't, the correction is going to have to be way more than what it would have been if you were ready for it. But he's right, that happy medium where it's just right, where he's ready and raring to go all the time, but it's not too much.
I'm realizing how big of a mistake it was having him down here, because like I'm so distracted right now in the best way possible. It's just like you're talking, I'm just like looking at Doug. Doug is incredible. All right, let's talk about turkeys. So for us, we know turkey hunting to a certain extent. We've all done it. But what I want to know, I guess let's start out, what areas of the country have you turkey hunted in?
Not very many, I won't lie. I'm usually so busy in the springtime, I don't get much opportunity to travel a bunch and turkey hunt. I do anticipate that changing a little bit here in the next couple of years. I've already talked to a couple guys about hunting next season before I get going in Michigan, but hunted one day in Florida this year for Osceolas. Didn't work out. That's turkey hunting. Sometimes you get them the first morning, sometimes you don't. I didn't have a whole lot of time to put towards it this year, being that I was charter fishing primarily. But had a good morning. We were close to birds. It just didn't line up. And that's, like I said, sometimes the turkeys win, and that's okay.
I've heard Osceolas are harder to target in Florida just because everything is so thick.
Yeah, not only is it so thick, but it's also so pressured. So if you're leaning towards public ground, I mean, there's a lot of public pressure because everybody and their brother from anywhere in the country has to go there to get their Osceolas. There's a lot of pressure there. Land access for private ground is tough and or expensive. So I ended up just going with an outfitter since I had short window of time to go. So I went with an outfitter friend. I hunted a little bit of time in Texas a couple years back for Rios. And then actually last spring, I had one morning as well to hunt, and we stopped in North Carolina. I have some clients that farm cotton and soybeans and stuff. They got like 40,000 acres they farm there, like big operation.
Jeez.
Whoa. Big operation, not a small farm. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of opportunity to turkey hunt on that much ground. And so went there with the intention of kind of going hunting with the group, and I thought I was maybe going to shoot a turkey potentially, but I don't really turkey hunt to shoot turkeys anymore. I just enjoyed the experience. One of the other guys was like, hey, you know, such and such, his name was Thad. Thad had never shot a turkey before. I was like, well, no problem. Let's have him shoot the turkey. So we went in, scouted the night before, and Bobby's like, here's what they've been doing. This is what we need to do. And then I took that in the next morning, and going in the dark, everything always looks so different. Where they're at in North Carolina, they have all these drainage ditches along the fields. Mm-hmm. So me, where I'm from, I'm just so used to like, oh, edge of the field, let's just tuck up against this tree, no big deal. Well, we walk in the morning and there's like this 30-foot ditch with water in it. So we can't get across to sit on the other side for one. Plus it's going to, subtract from the distance that you have to shoot the turkey since you can't shoot them too far with a shotgun. So I'm like, oh, we're like scrambling, trying to figure out what we're going to do so that we're in the right spot. So last minute, we're like scrambling, trying to like pick pieces of bushes and stuff and make a makeshift blind that a turkey's not going to see us through. And so we ended up actually building a blind really fast before sunup. And next thing you know, they pitched down right into the field where we were at. And within maybe 30 or 45 minutes or so, we actually called the tom off of the hens, and Thad shot his first turkey on film.
Wow.
Just lights out. So he had, if I remember right, I think he had a dud shell too. Like, I'll have to watch the footage back, but there was some issue with the gun. And so we had to take care of that too, all while trying to get him his first turkey. So talked him through that, and it was awesome.
That's crazy, because it is hard. Anybody who knows turkey hunting knows it's almost impossible to pull a tom off of a hen. Yeah, so Tom came off the hens, and it was on.
Were you running decoys?
Mm-hmm, we did have decoys out that day. So it sounds like we'll probably go over all that stuff too as the show goes on. I think that'll probably be a good talk. But North Carolina was one, Florida, Texas, and Michigan. And I think that's it.
What's your favorite species of turkey? Do you find that their mannerisms are different, or do they all kind of act the same, just like elk?
I mean, I think a turkey's a turkey because they're all going to react similar ways to weather and pressure. And I think those are a couple big factors that really affect them on their day-to-day. Obviously, each species is going to be a little bit different just because they do live in different terrains. But for me, like hunting those turkeys in North Carolina in a bean field that's got 3-inch sprouts in it is really no different than me hunting turkeys in Michigan in the middle of May when there's the same size sprouts in it. It's pretty close. It's nothing too crazy different there.
Okay. That's fascinating.
That sounds a lot like my first turkey when I went to shoot. My shotgun misfired. I had a dud round, and I have a semi-automatic shotgun, and it was just an absolute cluster with those two birds trying to figure out what was going on, dude. It was brutal. Like one of the most like high-stress moments I've ever had in hunting, because I've just always heard like turkey's eyesight's really good, so I'm like tucked up in a big brush pile, and it was just awful until it actually like I was able to get another shell in and take the shot. And I'm sure like is Thad, you said your buddy's name was?
Yep.
I'm sure Thad was feeling the same. I mean, your heart's just racing the entire time. You're like, crap, I'm about to blow this whole thing.
Right. And
it's awful.
And it's not something that you practice for usually either.
No. And like, typically when something misfires, I'm like tap, rack, bang. That's what I train for. But you can't do that with a like semi-automatic shotgun. You're sitting there like trying to discharge, get another one in the tube. It's just so bad. You can't just rack and shoot. It's a cluster, dude.
Now, here's a question. When you're scouting, I know there's a lot of guys, from what my understanding is, that'll go try to roost birds. So they'll go out in the evening, they'll try to find where they're roosting at so they know where to set up the next morning. I also know guys that will go and cruise fields like midday, mid-morning, drive around, find where they're all strutting, and then try to get on them. What have you found is the most beneficial way to do it?
Well, we'll just answer that in the order the questions were asked. Roosting a turkey is 50-50 once you find them. You're either going to get them the next morning or they're going to fly the other way and you're not.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I will not lie to you by saying, my least productive way of hunting turkeys is right off the limb. From a statistic standpoint, I'm not going to say you can't do it or you can't kill them right off the limb or first thing in the morning. It can work very, very well, and it can be some of the best turkey hunting you'll have. You've seen videos, I'm sure, of turkeys pitching down into dudes' laps just about, right out of the tree if you're in the exact right spot. But that was the 50% that he flew the right way that morning. All it takes is one quick turn and he flies the other way, and your morning, just got a lot longer. Where I think a lot of guys go wrong is when a situation doesn't go exactly how you planned it, by trying to force something that might not work. Let's just say you do want to hunt that turkey the next day. If you booger him that morning and push him or overcall to him or, show him some pressure that he's not used to seeing, well, Now the next time he hears that calling or sees that similar hunting style, he's got that checklist in his brain. If you're, within a couple days of him seeing that pressure initially, he's going to know the bets are off before he even thinks about coming in.
It's super similar with deer too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, it can be translated over to pretty much any animal.
Yeah. So that's what I would say for the roost side of things. It's never a bad idea to roost a bird and try and get up in there in the morning, right into his bedroom within reason. Don't get too close. But
how close is too close?
It kind of really depends on what type of woods you're in. If you're surrounded by a bunch of cedar trees or something with some heavy foliage or cover, you're going to be able to get a lot closer than if you're in tall, deciduous forest earlier in the year when there's not leaf cover, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to get 100 or 150 yards. You might not even be able to get 300 yards, close enough to that turkey without, when the sun comes up, you being able to see him, right? And if you can sit that still for that long, where you can be closer than that, good on you, because you're going to be sitting there for a while. Usually 150 to 200 yards is pretty sufficient. I don't usually try and push it much more than that, but also, I mean, if it's thick, sometimes you can get a little closer. But from a statistical side of things, and the amount of times that it works compared to not working, if I can find somewhere that they're going to go and strut around, that 7:30 to 9 o'clock window, that's typically where I'm going to start my day. Just because, again, I want them to do the same thing every single day, and then where I've watched them do it 3, 4, 5, 10 days in a row, versus, well, hopefully they pitch down the right way out of the tree today. It doesn't matter what way they pitch out of the tree if they go to the same strut zone every single day at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, or, the most predictable thing seems to be the hens. So if you can figure out where the hens are going and just get ahead of them and just wait, sometimes it doesn't take a whole lot of calling or convincing if you can just be in the right place. So I know that might not be as exciting of an opportunity as just calling the tom to you, but sometimes you do have to just let nature run its course and kind of take advantage of the opportunity you have. And sometimes the decoys can help you out a lot there too, where you can get the boss hen ticked off, or the big tom is frustrated that somebody's trying to take one of his ladies. But being in that right spot, typically, like I said, that 7:30 to 9 o'clock window seems to be the bread and butter spot for sure that you want to be in, for sure. Definitely.
That is fascinating. Are you more of a believer in decoys or not? Is it just situational?
I definitely think it's situational. And for me, in my situation of guiding, or any of my team guiding, hunters or customers, clients, friends, whatever you want to say, I really like having decoys because it increases the length of the time of that opportunity that you have with the bird. If I'm just sitting at the base of the tree in the woods or on the field edge, I know that if a turkey just periscopes up and gives me a 3-second shot window or less, I know that I can snap on that bird and shoot it. But if I have a 7-year-old kid that's never shot a turkey, if I can hold that turkey's attention for 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes.
Interesting.
And give them, just like deer hunting, the broadside shot at 15 yards. Granted, with a turkey, typically, I like to have them at that 20 to 30 yard window so that pattern can open up a little bit. But if I can have that turkey there and give them a good opportunity to maybe calm your nerves a little bit, or get set up for a better shot, or readjust, or if there's a misfire or whatever the situation is, you don't really know. That seems to be the name of the game. Plus, if you can really watch the turkey doing its thing and have a little bit of a show for a while, that's even better.
Do you ever have guys that come out with bows trying to kill turkeys, or with bows, or is that really rare?
I try to avoid it at all costs. But
why is that?
Very, very high risk of screwing up an opportunity or wounding game.
Yeah, I could see that.
And
it's pretty much a headshot, or you got to be right on the money.
Yeah, and there's opportunity to shoot the bird in the body. I mean, there's vitals. I mean, I would say...
But it's about the size of a walnut.
I'd give it a softball.
Okay.
Softball's being maybe a little bit bigger, maybe, depending on the angle. But, I mean, there's so many factors. Does the bird move? Obviously, can you get drawn without getting seen? And that's kind of, again, a rule that I have just deer hunting. If the deer's looking at me, I'm not going to shoot at it. It's just, I'm not going to. It's not worth it. Same thing. If a turkey watches you draw and bets are off. He gone. It's just, it's not worth it.
I believe it.
And the tough thing is you have a guy that has, in his mind, a 3-day window to shoot a turkey, so he's going to probably want to force a shot that you might not typically want to take. And it's just not worth wounding game. So I won't say I never do it, but I do really try to deter it as much as I can, just from an ethics standpoint.
I feel like you got to be really, really dialed to shoot. And that's why so many guys use those guillotine broadheads, so you can just take the head off. But even that,
those, I will not lie. I personally have had turkeys duck, not even looking at me, duck the arrow at less than 15 yards. Like literally,
that's wild.
I had it on film. Like you draw the outline of where the head was, and you play it through, and you watch the arrow or the broadhead goes right through that silhouette of the bird where it was, but the bird ain't there.
Oh my gosh.
So, but that's just the way it is.
What do you generally run in for shotguns?
There's been a lot of a push in popularity of people hunting with the 410s now that the TSS game has increased to what it has.
What's the TSS?
Tungsten shot or super shot.
Oh yeah.
So there's no arguing the science there. It's very, very dense, so you could shoot a very small pellet. So you're seeing 7s, 9s, 10s, 10.5s, 11s, even like tiny, tiny pellets. Like it looks like flecks of sand almost. They're so small.
Really?
It's incredible. It really is. But it carries its kinetic energy so well, and you can fit so many pellets in that payload that, I mean, like in a 12 gauge shell, there's over 900 size 9 shot in a 3-inch shell.
I'm picturing, like, have you seen those bug assault guns where you put the salt in? That's what I'm picturing.
Yes.
Just like micro grains that are tungsten. That's
Seriously.
wild.
Also, for the folks at home listening, don't buy bug assault guns for your hunting camp, or you will all be shooting them at each other.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I bet. Did you see the CO2 one that they came out with?
No, the pump one was enough, man.
Yeah, they made a CO2 one.
Really? Yeah, Aunt Christine loaded those up with like those little sprinkles, like the really fine ones. Not like the ones that are like transparent, but like the colored sugar, but like the fine sprinkles. And she was like a menace during family Christmas one year, and it was brutal, man. Like those things hurt like a mother.
I've never messed around with them, but if they can blast a fly into a bunch of pieces, it makes sense.
That's what I want to see. I want to see tungsten shot loaded into a buck of salt and a turkey killed with it.
You'd probably put a hole through the wall, but it probably could kill a turkey too.
That's a really good idea though with the 410, because I've got a couple shotguns, but I don't have a designated turkey gun.
Has Slockmaster killed a turkey with a blowgun yet?
I don't know.
I'd imagine he's had to it by now. But
he killed a bear. Did you see that video?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But yeah, the 410s are really great thing, especially for, youth hunters, people that are new to hunting.
They're so versatile. Small game
females,
hunting, anything.
Whatever. But yeah, it's so comfortable. There's not the noise factor for them to, be fearful of, anticipating that big recoil or whatever. I mean, I've had guys shoot turkeys with the 410 and like just out of instinct, so many people still shoot them with a 12 gauge that when I hear that go off, it sounds like a cap gun. And I'm like, did the gun go off? Is everything good? And then I like look out there and like, I'm talking that TSS like flat out, like cold cocks a turkey, right? Like no flopping whatsoever. They'll do a backflip and not even kick one time.
That's crazy. I'll have to look into that because I do need a bird gun of sorts. Now, when it comes to waterfowl, no bueno with the 410 and the tungsten.
Honestly, it's probably not a bad option. You definitely end up with a little bit smaller, pattern density just because you don't have quite the amount of shot.
Is it going to be pattern and you're not going to get the distance?
That's something that you do sacrifice, just having a smaller pattern. However, the killing capability with the kinetic energy being what it is, it's still possible to shoot something at good distance with that. You just don't have as many pellets.
Right.
So, and that's one thing that you do have to consider when you're shooting a bird that's flying versus shooting a turkey. Oftentimes with a 410, I mean, a 40, maybe 50-yard shot isn't out of the picture. 40 for sure. But that's because your entire shot is going at that one target. When you're swinging,
It's gonna
right?
spread.
You're kind of spreading the pellets a little bit as you swing. So I think you might be not in the greatest spot there. It would work, but not as well.
You ever seen somebody kill a turkey on the fly, coming down off the roost?
Not off the roost, but I have seen people miss turkeys on the ground and then shoot them on the way out flying. Yes,
That's wild.
it was pretty cool. I won't lie.
Caleb Reeder took a bird that way one time.
Coming down, or like just
Going
like
away.
as it runs and it
So-
takes
it,
off.
it took off flying away, and he just
And
took it
I
off the
don't
sky.
know what the legality would be.
I was just about to ask that.
off the limb, because like by the way that the book reads, you can't shoot a turkey out of the tree or like roosted off the limb, whatever. So I wouldn't imagine you should shoot one as
That's
soon as it flies, because
pretty gray.
you could just you could just sit there and wait for it to fly off the limb and just shoot it in the air. But I don't think you can do that.
I remember back in the day, my grandma had this up at the ranch. They had this big white pine, and it was almost 2-3 days a week. You'd get like a flock of 20 or 30 turkeys that would roost up in this white pine, and they would poop on top of her RV like every night. It looked like one of those shipwrecks that you see that are just like coated. You know, like the lighthouses look just like coated. It looks like frosting. The RV was like that. So she used to go out there after they'd roost, she with the BB gun, and she'd hit one or two of them, just trying to get them to fly off, and then everybody else would follow. But that's like a core memory of as a kid. She'd wake me up after I went to bed at like 9 o'clock. We'd all go out with a flashlight, and we would shoot BB guns at the turkeys to get them to move along.
I don't know what the legality of that is in pestering wildlife, maybe, but I'm here for it.
Poop on the RV.
Should have done slingshots.
Yeah. I mean, they were low-powered BB guns, too.
Oh, okay.
Like, we're
Like the
talking...
little Red Rider
yes,
one pump.
we're talking the
loaded
Red
into the front
Rider
of the barrel.
daisies. Just
Yeah.
the dunk. If anything, just piss them off.
So people using 410s, I mean, what's your... Okay, so like you got somebody that you're guiding. What's the longest shot that you'll have them take? Say like, okay, you're going to be okay.
So we do typically try and get everything inside of 30 yards. And I always try and preach that to any of my guys that are guiding and the customers. If we don't provide you an opportunity inside of that, I don't feel like we really did our job. We're not going to ask somebody to take an unethical shot or rushed shot or, a bad opportunity that doesn't make sense to just be forcing something like that. So again, like I said, a 410, 40 yards, no problem. Obviously, as you step it up, 20 gauge, 12 gauge, whatever, a lot of these 12 gauges with the right chokes and the right TSS, there's guys that I hear every year, they're like, oh, I shot a turkey at 72 yards or 72 steps, or I shot a turkey at 80 yards. And to me, I'm always about killing things more ethically. However, I kind of have that internal tear where I'm like, is that still turkey hunting? At that point, you might as well be shooting with a rifle, because I do pride myself in getting the turkey completely fooled and calling him all the way to me, and sealing the deal that way. That's part of the experience for me. If I don't fool him like that and get him to come to me to where he's not hung up and we're not just killing him just to kill him because, we had to kill him at 80 yards or whatever, it might as well be 200 at that point. Like I said, you might as well just shoot him with a scoped rifle. Not saying do that, but 80 yards, I mean, he's not even close.
What's the legality of that?
It's legal.
You can shoot him with a rifle?
No, not with a rifle, but you can shoot him at 80 yards with the right TSS legally because you shot it with, a shotgun and not a single projectile and the whole 9 yards. But again, like I said, I don't think that's not turkey hunting. I mean,
It takes the fun out of it. Now, like for turkey hunting, for Midwesterners like us, it's our version of elk hunting when you're not elk hunting. What other animal
for us Midwesterner poors?
Yeah, that's true. What other game animal though can we go after where you have the same calling method?
Coyotes,
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah,
But
yes,
not
yes and no,
not
but
game
not like
birds.
the male and female interaction that you have like with coyotes too.
I'll jeopardize their male and female sequencing every time.
That's wild.
So, not to go too far down
You're
a
a
rabbit
legend.
hole, but the more time you spend listening to coyotes, and I won't say I get it right every single time, but I will say 90% of the time when I get a response coyote hunting, I can almost always tell you what the sex of it is. And then you do whatever there's so many different sounds that a coyote will make. I'll counter it with whatever I think needs to be the right one. Call it in, kill that coyote, and flip. That's my first thing. As soon as I kill it, I run over there and flip it over, and I'm like, yes, I was right. Or I'm like, wow, I haven't heard that one out of a female. So
That's crazy.
I swear. And if I didn't have as many people that hunt with me and see it happen to be able to back me up, I wouldn't say it, but I'm telling you for sure.
Is that information that you want to disclose of like how to differentiate between the two?
Yeah, I mean,
on this week's of Coyote Talk,
ultimately, it's just going to be exposure to going and listening to it. So, I mean, it's not really anything I can say exactly. I can't make the vocalization myself. I won't lie. I'm not that good yet.
You should try.
Maybe we're gonna tap Doug. We're gonna tap Doug in real quick. But
it is so unearthly when you hear Yodi.
Yeah, but
off.
Typically
Scary.
it just does come down to the pitch and what the vocalization is. And I mean, like I said, that's very vague.
Females higher pitched.
Typically a lot higher pitch.
We're in 2024 though, so you never know.
You really don't know.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
The they them coyotes.
So,
The
anyways,
ones that kind of serve you cosmic fries at Hopkett.
Ooh. We went there.
we did. We got the full experience
Conner got a new friend tonight.
with the nails to boot.
Yes. Yes, our waiter at the restaurant this evening.
Waitress, or
Yeah, I don't know. But
I don't know. I wasn't there. I just heard the story that Conner was getting checked out.
They had some killer nails though. Like 2-inch, like longer nails than Doug.
Daggers.
Ooh.
Yeah. The kind that you kind of want to have your back scratched by.
Yeah.
Typically, they call them unemployment nails because you can't do anything with them. But he was working.
He was.
She was working.
We gave them a good tip. Moving on, back to turkey talk.
Glad I missed dinner.
Reed would have leaned into that one. We were good. It was a good experience.
That's fair.
It was great. As far as turkeys go, let's go through your seasonal process. So are you usually, in Michigan, I know they pushed the turkey season back. I know we're only given a short amount of time. Are you usually completely booked out ahead of time for turkey season where it's like, hey, I've got no more spots? Or are you booking as season goes along? How does that work out for you?
So right now we have 3 camps and in the midst of opening a 4th. So if that gives you any mention of where we're at, we're pretty well booked. So South camp's full up right now. Can't take any more there. I think I have maybe 2 sets of dates left at our West camp. And then the camp that I run, North camp, with the lodging, I think I have 2 dates available to there. So it's pretty slim pickings this late in the season. Every once in a while I may have a cancellation or dates change or whatever, where we'll be able to book a few more people during season. But typically, within a week or so of season, we're good to go there.
What's the average hunt look like for you? Is it a weekend or just one Saturday?
So again, you kind of mentioned it. We are fortunate in Michigan to have a longer season than most states do. I just had a phone call with one of my good buddies in Indiana today, and we talked about the differences in our season. And I had no idea how short their season was, but he said, hey, we only have 18 days here, which is like basically 2 weeks, we'll just say. 2.5 weeks. But Michigan, I think last year we had 43 days. So again, it is a short season, but it is longer than some other turkey seasons other places. But being that it is such a small chunk of the year or calendar year, we do book just back to back to back days. So we do work all of our hunts into being 3 days. Biggest reason is just for weather insurance or assurance purposes, however you want to say that. That's the one variable that we can't control. The birds, 2 variables, the birds and the weather. So say you had your first day, it's just a torrential downpour, lightning, whatever. We'll hunt you in the downpour, but if, it's unsafe, obviously that's not ideal. It doesn't happen very often, but it's always nice to have a couple backup days just in case. Obviously, if you scout 7 days in a row and it's sunny and 65 degrees and then all of a sudden a major front pushes in, they're wild animals, they're going to change up a little bit. So it's always good to have a few extra days just in case. But that said, it's not going to be just a Saturday or, the same 3 days every week. It just goes, if it's Friday to Sunday, then it's Monday to Wednesday, and then it's Thursday to Saturday, whatever, all the way through season.
Are turkey more temperamental when it comes to weather than ducks and geese?
Yes and no. I mean, they all change with the weather every single day, and a lot of them are in similar ways as far as their feeding patterns and stuff go, but being that they're not a migratory bird, they're not going to just up and leave if there's 30-mile-an-hour south wind. They're not going to just fly 500 miles north all of a sudden if the opportunity presents itself. They're just going to change, like I said earlier, the 50-50 chance of them making this trail or that trail. They're just going to take the other trail. So, as we've hunted as much as we have and scouted even more and learned the habits of these birds, when the weather does change that way, we kind of know what to anticipate. So if we've seen them in this certain place doing this same thing for the last 4 or 5 days, and then all of a sudden it's going to, mist rain, we know where they're going to go. Usually we don't get it right every time, but a lot of times it works out.
What percentage of the work when it comes to turkey hunting is around scouting ahead of time?
I think that's a big part that most people are led astray on. I actually just had a guy on a Facebook group post today that I read that was saying, hey, I've been going out calling for turkeys for the last 3 weeks and I haven't been unsuccessful trying to get them to come in and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, calling like before season, why?
I mean, it is fun. Like we've got 3 toms out here that it's just, you'll hit them with a little hen call and just hearing them hammer off. It's fun, but I don't think that's the proper way to scout.
Yeah. And so the problem you run into there is that now you're using all your tools in your toolbox before you even try and hunt them. So
I was going to say, are you teaching those birds?
Yeah, they're going to catch on to your foolery.
Oh,
so
no.
I think...
Oh, no. I've screwed the pooch.
Uh-oh. I think the best way is to just observe what they do every day and then be able to take advantage of where, their weakness is, essentially, where you see the best opportunity to put yourself to where they're not going to expect it. If you go out and call to them from the same place, or you go try and do the same thing for 3 weeks up to season and then go try and do the same thing once season starts, they're going to be onto you.
That's interesting. It's the same kind of thing with deer. Like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, I didn't even think about that because the amount of times I go out just for fun, just to try to get them fired up and everything like that. But if eventually at some point they're going to figure it out.
Right. So I always say you want to be minimally invasive. That's the best way I can say it, being minimally invasive and understanding how they work day to day without knowing you're there or knowing you're watching.
So are you looking for droppings and tracks? Like when you're starting your scouting process, so brand new piece of property, and this I think could probably help some of the beginners.
Sure. Like
no experience turkey hunting at all. What's your start to finish process of getting on birds?
So I won't lie at all. When you do get a new piece of property, it does take some time to fully understand the contours of the property or elevation changes or different types of forest, whatever the case may be. It's going to take some time to learn where the wildlife moves in and around that property. But obviously, if you don't put the time and put the work in, you're never going to know. So the longer history you have with a property, the better off you're going to be. But for right off the get-go, trying to get things rolling, I'll usually make one walk through the property, especially like if there's 2 track trails through it. I'll try and make my way through there, kind of get a good beat on where, like I said, certain types of trees are, where they may roost or may not roost. But really, until you get some time watching where the birds move and what they do, it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good to be bumping around in there because you're going to be disturbing it more than actually understanding. So if you can get some trail cams out, definitely do that.
Never thought about using trail cams for turkeys.
Oh, so cell cams for turkeys are lights out. And some places I think are even starting to outlaw it. It's pretty crazy. But definitely saves us a lot of miles and a lot of fuel to be able to scout with cell cams 100%.
That's interesting. I don't know if it was just the misconception in my mind. Whenever I thought about trail cams, I always thought about just big game only.
and waterfowl.
No kidding. So, like, putting
you
them on
scout
ponds?
waterfowl with-
Like putting stakes on the side of a pond with a cam on it just to monitor?
Exactly.
No way.
What are you running for cell cams right now?
So right now I have coverts and spy points.
I had a really bad experience with my spy points.
I think everybody has bad experiences with all of them. I'm not going to
Right.
lie. They're all electronic. They're all going to fail at some point.
For me, it was the service.
Yeah.
The support of spy point was real rough.
Yeah.
Getting a hold of anybody.
Yeah. I have yet to find a company that has good support yet. But
I think everyone says Cuddy Link is pretty much the only one that has the best because they're made in the U.S.
that's where, again, you pay for it.
True.
Right?
No,
So
absolutely.
I'm going to sound cheap on this one, but we use so many. I mean, I typically have 40 to 50 cell cameras out in the springtime. I mean, that's a hardy tab right there.
Right.
Monthly subscription fee.
Ding.
Good gracious.
But the backside of that, like I said, is
Time.
a lot. Well, time, energy,
Fuel.
a lot of fuel.
Right.
A lot of fuel.
Especially running that Duramax down the road.
Well, it ain't just me. You know, I'll have 8 or 10 guys out scouting or hunting every day.
And that's on your dollar?
Absolutely.
Yep.
And that's in one camp. That's not even the other 2. Plus almost a 4th camp.
That was my next question: is how many crew members you have that are doing turkey? Same guys as waterfowl. You just all pivot to turkey.
Yes and no. I do have some guys that'll transfer over, but more so, I have other guys that guide turkey hunts other parts of the country earlier that will start guiding turkey hunts there and then finish up with us. And then they actually guide waterfowl hunts other places, which is totally fine. They've had their own operations places or they've already worked places for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to snipe somebody like that, obviously, unless they need work. Excuse me. But I've had, I think half my staff that's coming in this year worked for me last year, and then like 4 or 5 new hires.
That's awesome.
When you got guys that you're bringing in as a hire, are you hiring their talent or are you hiring a body and you're teaching them how to do it the way you do it?
I would say a little bit of both. I think that's the beauty of what we do. You know, a lot of these guys are very talented at hunting turkeys already. They're good with people, which is even more important, I think. But when you have a guy that's good with people and knows turkeys, knows their way around the turkey woods, is ethical, that's a big one. When you can find somebody that's ethical in all ways, not just hunting, but in life too. That's super good to have on board and part of the team or family. I mean, we lived together for basically 2 months. So it's very, very important to have people that are all like-minded in that regard too. But the cool thing is these guys have been raised in other places, other states, different hunting styles. The exposure in that regard, when you can come together in a room all geared towards the same purpose, you're able to say, hey, this worked, this didn't work. We tried this. What other things could we try? And bumping shoulders like that around the campfire or tossing bags, playing cornhole or whatever in that environment, you're able to learn exponentially how to be a more effective turkey hunter, all while, like I said, doing things the right way.
It is amazing if you surround yourself with the right people in any facet of life, how much you can grow, whether it's just always striving to be around people who are doing more than you. Even for the turkey example, even if you're just sitting around shooting the breeze on a back deck, knowing what questions to ask, it's just infinite amount of resources at our fingertips.
Yeah. And so as you just asked me, how do you break this property down or how do you scout this better? I don't know all the answers. I'll be the first to tell you that.
You've just learned it from trial and error over the years.
Yeah, I won't disagree with that, but I'm just saying I don't always have the best answer, or I'm not always going to get it right the first time. So when we do acquire a new property or have a new opportunity to hunt something differently or whatever the case may be, when I have other guys to see, hey, you know, what would you do? And that's an everyday conversation we have, even for places we've hunted before. Hey, they roosted differently than I've seen them, you know, for the last 10 years of being here. What would you think they're going to do in the morning? It's an educated guess going into the next day. I'd be lying if I said anything different because they're ultimately a wild animal. It's not like we've got them on a leash leading them in the path to get butchered.
What's the wildest turkey story you've ever had?
There's so many. There's really so many.
What's one that stands out to you that's just like absolutely insane?
Well, now that we have the misfire conversation, this is a 2-part story. This is a good one. This is a good one. I'll just tell the whole story. So, going back 2 years ago, I had a guy book a turkey hunt. I'll leave name and location and all that information out of it because it kind of takes a dirty turn. Came up, had never turkey hunted before, which I get that frequently. It's not a big deal. And honestly, I enjoy being able to kind of coach somebody along and give them that experience and share that with them, because I always say you get to see grown men act like children when they're so excited. They get this feeling that they're not used to processing, and so you get to see people act totally out of their norm. They don't know how to contain it. So we hunted along through the morning. A couple opportunities didn't work out, and as we mentioned earlier before the podcast, we like to have lots of options, because if something doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. On to the next. So moving along, checking different spots, keeping an eye on trail cameras, seeing if an opportunity presents itself, driving along, and I think, we were driving along just outside of town, and there's a property that we can't hunt. It's a big hayfield, and there was one strutter about 100 yards off the property line where we do have access. And so it was like 11 o'clock, he's all by himself, and we were on our way back for lunch. I'm like, hey, this is our opportunity. If you can push off lunch for a little bit, let's try it. So we go in, and it's windy, get set up, and set down. There really wasn't a great hide, and the sun was right on us. So I was like, man, not ideal. Like, I felt like we stuck out like a sore thumb, but being still is the best camouflage. I will live and die by that. So we're sitting there. I call a couple times. He responds. Give him the silent treatment. 5 minutes later, he calls again. So I give him a little something to keep him stringing along. That goes back and forth for a little while, and then he was quiet for about 20 minutes. And I'm like, man, I had already texted one of our scouts that was on the road that morning. I'm like, hey, can you buzz by such and such property? Let me know what you see. And he's like, man, he's almost to the tree line. So even though he was only 100 yards off when we first saw him, he was getting closer, but it had taken him about 40 minutes to get there. And so he still had about 80 yards to close before he was in the clearing that we were in. And it was like mostly cedars and alders, so it's pretty thick. But I knew once I got him into the woods there, he was going to come the rest of the way. But he never gobbled again after that. Like from the woods, or from the field, he never gobbled in the woods. So Will had texted me and said, hey, he's on his way. So we stuck it out. And that was kind of about that point where I'm like, he's either going to come or he's not. And if I was feeling like he wasn't, we we're going to leave. It was about 45, 50 minutes in. And so I called one more time, and I'm sitting there, and nothing. Can't hear anything. And all of a sudden, out of the edge of all these like raspberries or blackberries, right on the edge of that clearing, I see there's his head. Or I think I could see the top of his fan. I can't remember what I saw first, but I was like, here he comes. And so we just had one lone hen decoy out, and he was full strut as soon as he got into the clearing, or probably even all the way through the woods. I don't know. Full strut, spitting and drumming through the clearing. Here I am with this hunter that hasn't ever killed a turkey before, and he's like super antsy. I can see him shaking, like he's just all worked up. Turkey's at about 35, 40 yards on a beeline for the decoy, but not in a hurry. I mean, he knows what's going on. He's like, I'm about to get in here with this hen and have my way. This is awesome. So he's just one step at a time, spitting, drumming, coming in. And all of a sudden I hear click. Deep down inside, I knew what it was. I knew he had tried to shoot, but I was being hopeful, and I said, was that your safety going off? He said, no, I tried to shoot. And like I said, I knew what the sound was, but I was just really hoping that it was a safety, because I was like, man, to be not in a good hide and have a misfired gun, now we got a problem. Well, this guy had forgotten to load his gun in the midst of getting out of the truck and this run and gun style.
Good grief.
And I didn't even think to ask, hey, did you load your gun? Well, he had put him into the tube, but not into the chamber. So now I've got this turkey.
Was he running a pump?
It was an auto, so even worse.
Oh.
So I've got this turkey that to me is dead to rights, 35 yards, because the clearing's not very big. It was about 40 yards when he tried to shoot. So it was an ethical shot, but the decoy was at like 25. So when the gun goes off, or it misfires, we'll say, dry fires is technically correct. Turkey kind of, flinches a little bit, looks around, but there's no movement. So he's like, all right, straight back to strut mode. He never broke strut, but he put his head up a little bit. Back to the decoy. And again, like I said, it keeps their attention. So he's keyed in on this decoy. So I'm like, all right, well, he's still looking at the decoy. We'll just see how this plays out. So being that he'd never shot a turkey before, I really tried to explain things as best as I could. So, and this is all on film, so I'll have to send this to you later. But
I'd love to see that.
He is sitting there, and I'm like, all right, well, you're going to have to, somehow get your right hand to the charging handle. So he starts reaching. I was like, do it real slow. Starts reaching, and I'm like, okay, now pull it back as slow as you can. As slow as you can. And I was trying to wait till the turkey would turn around, but just due to where the decoy was at and everything, the turkey was still kind of looking at us. So we never really got the opportunity to have his fan towards us and like really scramble. So I was like, all right, rack it back, hold it there. And I was hoping he would maybe turn away, and he didn't. And so I was like, okay, now just let go of the charging handle. Because with an auto, if you just like, well,
right.
Not only that, but it doesn't seat all the way.
Right.
So if it doesn't seat all the way, then you got to do it all over again. Rack your live shell out, and then hope that your, technically probably your last shell in the tube is now the one that you're going to be relying on if you get it to seat. So I'm like, all right, now let go. And he like let it like halfway and then let it go. And I could just tell, I was like, oh, like it might go off, it might not. And I'm like, all right, now, slowly work your hand back to the grip. And when you're ready, shoot him. And a lot of times, if you can get to that point, and like I said, I've done this a lot of times, I've seen a lot of misses, a lot of scrambles, whatever, where it's not the textbook way. More times than not, they will miss that second shot because at this point, you're so frazzled. Bad deal. So I'm like, and he's never shot a turkey before, so I'm like full on expecting him just to completely miss at this point. I'm like, all right, now take your time, settle in. And when you're ready, shoot the turkey. And he rocks it. And like immediately, like just relief for me that he made a great shot and that he got his bird. But oh my gosh, he was so just ecstatic through the top. So happy. And so like I was pumped up. He was pumped up. Got it on film. Awesome hunt. And honestly, that's my favorite way to actually call turkeys is that midday gobbler. I mean, it's incredible. So that's story number one of this 2-part event. The crazy part of the story is I always, touch base with customers after season because he had already showed interest in coming back and hunting the next year. Got his first turkey, wants to turkey hunt again. I'm like, awesome, come back. Sometimes our customers will hunt at a different camp, a different hunting style, whatever, but a lot of times they're going to come back. Very, very high rebooking rate, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But
about what percentage would you say comes back?
I would say for turkey hunters, it's like 60 to 70%, which sounds
no, that's amazing.
Well, it's lower than our goose hunting by a good bit, which is like in the 90s. But 60 to 70% is lower in my opinion because a lot of guys want to hunt a state one time and then they don't want to essentially quote unquote waste time in that state again because they want to hunt the other 48. There's 49 states. They want to hunt the other 48 states to get their turkeys. So there's a short amount of time to be able to do that. So a lot of times they're going to hunt the state and then go to the next. So it's always good to keep those people happy though, because they know other turkey hunters. So you get a lot of referrals. So even though they might not come back, their friends will.
Yeah.
So anyways, on to part 2. I contacted this guy, a couple different times outside of season where I said, hey, are you looking at coming back? Yep. Definitely. So we're looking at dates. Well, then all of a sudden, he had family stuff going on or the dates didn't work out, whatever the case may be, all the typical stuff I hear all the time. And that's okay. Life happens. I understand. Well, long story short, no longer was he able to turkey hunt the next spring, or so I had been told. So fast forward to the next season, we're turkey hunting and you can kind of see where the story's going. We're turkey hunting in the morning, and my 2 hunters shot their birds at about, I want to say 7:30, 7:45. It was pretty early on. And I'm getting back to camp, and I get a text in the group with all the guys out scouting, and somebody had checked the trail cams, and he said, hey, was somebody supposed to be hunting on such and such property? And I said, well, there's people that can hunt the neighbor's property, but technically not the one that the camera's on. Why? And then like before I could even get that sent, here comes the picture from the trail camera. Some guy all face painted up turkey hunting.
Oh no.
And so I was about probably 25 minutes away from that location. And I'm like, uh-oh, we better go investigate. Because I honestly had 2 gobblers on trail camera on that exact camera that he showed up on that were like just textbook every day at 7:30 coming through with the hens. And I had the next group coming in the next day, and we were going to go hunt those birds. Not going to lie. Like it was just perfect.
But you didn't have permission?
No. I do have permission there.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But nobody else is. I've turkey hunted that piece for 8 years.
Got it.
And managed everything. Habitat, predators, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on and on. And so I'm like, man, what is going on? So you
didn't know the guy that was camo?
Just wait.
Oh, okay.
So I never jumped to conclusions. And again, I don't own the property. So I don't know. Maybe somebody did get permission, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the properties that we do hunt that we may have leased, or I've got this long outstanding relationship with the landowner, a lot of times they do have me help manage who is on the property a lot of times, because
that's a big deal to landowners.
Absolutely. And they might not live on the property to know what's going on.
Right.
So if somebody is trespassing, they do want to know about it for a lot of reasons. Mostly liability is a big one. So I'm like, is anybody close to that property? And that answer was no. I kind of was the closest one, even at 25 minutes. A lot of guys were spread out scouting or hunting still. So I had the guys that I work with in Florida, Jamie and John, were with me, and I'm like, hey, if you guys want to do some wild stuff, get in the truck. If not, stay here. And so we hop in the truck, and it was like I said, typically about 25 minutes. I think we made it there in about 17. And if you ask Jamie or John, they'd probably say about 9 minutes. But we hauled into town, and as soon as I was turning onto that road, I could see where that entrance oil well trail was, or 2-track to that property, and a burgundy like SUV pulled out. And so as I passed that SUV, I could see that the guy had face paint on in the front seat driving. And so I flip around and I start following that. And as I turn around, the guy just took off. He kind of knew something was going on. So I was in my truck and it's deleted. So I was not getting outrun by anything. And so I follow him, and he gets into town and then finally turns off on a side street and pulls over when he finally noticed that somebody was tailing him, and gets out of the truck. And once he got out of the SUV and started walking back towards me, it was like all like postured up, like all tough. And
strutting.
Yeah. And then as soon as he got to the front of my truck and could see who was driving, you could see his tone and posture completely changed to like, oh, like he knew he was in deep doo-doo, because at that moment I recognized who it was too. And it was the same guy from story 1 that was too busy and couldn't come. And I'll say this, he lives over 8 hours of a drive from where I was at. So he really put some effort into coming up and trespassing. So,
oh my gosh.
Again, if you ask Jamie and John, I was far too light on this guy. But when I say a grown man was in tears, he was in tears. He was crying because he knew that he screwed up. First, the story started out as I thought it was public land. But here's the deal. Not only do we all have access to apps with that information at our fingertips,
Or the internet.
But that
everywhere.
oil well 2-track trail is very well marked with a gate and signs the whole way in. So he said he didn't kill a turkey. I didn't search the car or anything, and I don't think he killed one.
Not based on story number 1.
Right. But either way, like I said, he was in tears and was very apologetic and mortified that he got caught.
Oof.
But long story short, that's one of the crazier turkey stories that I've had.
That's up there.
One of.
That's one of the best ones I've heard.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So that has now entered the blacklist of turkey hunters that are not welcome back at my camp or referred anywhere else.
There you go.
Well, don't worry. He's just out trespassing on your local property.
Probably.
Turkey hunting stories, you hear a lot of people getting shot at or shot. You ever had anything close?
Honestly, I haven't had, fortunately, and knock on wood, I haven't had any run-ins like that. And I think that is, again, because we do manage the properties we hunt so well and are in such close contact with the people that we're hunting on their property that we know with the different seasons and zones and whatnot, if they do have family that's going to hunt the first season and there's a lot of turkeys on the property, we might hunt it the second season. I'm not going to go in there the first season, obviously, if there's other if there's other people hunting it. That's just not the way we roll. So just trying to minimize pressure. I try and avoid being around other people turkey hunting because I don't want to interfere with their hunt.
Right.
I don't want them to interfere with us. And I definitely don't want it to be unsafe for anybody either.
Correct. Well, so, I mean, approximately how many landowners are you working with on a regular basis? Let's just say in the state of Michigan. Ballpark. Low end, high end.
Only disclose what you can.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
could
too.
be
No, I can answer it. I'm just trying to think. I mean, 500, 1,000?
What? Landowners?
Yeah, a lot.
I was thinking like 40 or 50.
I mean, we have just at our North Camp alone over 300,000 acres of private access.
Oh my gosh.
So, our smallest tracts are going to be 10 to 20 acres, probably 5 acres. But a lot of our property owners, they're big time farmers with 3 to 5,000 acres that they farm or lease that they also have the hunting rights to.
Do you find that like you're the bad guy in your area because you're locking out all the land for turkey, goose, stuff like that, or no?
I mean, obviously, anytime you take anything to this scale, there's going to be people that you make happy and there's going to be some people that you can't make happy. And so that's the hard part where you do have to recognize you're not always going to be the good guy in everybody's story.
Right.
However, I will say I do my best to try and appease as many people as I can and stay on everybody's good side for a lot of reasons. It is a small community that I'm from, and so word does travel very, very quickly.
Yep.
So if you don't maintain those relationships and do your best to keep everybody happy, you're shooting yourself in the foot for a lot of reasons.
He's so photogenic.
But I would definitely say there's going to always be a few people that no matter how hard you try and how many puddles you try and jump over or oceans you try and jump over for them, they're still never going to see your side. What I will say, as far as the turkey hunting side goes, I'm going to give whoever has, local or family, they're going to get first grabs at anything because they are from here. They do live there. And as I've already mentioned, we do try and have a lot of different places to have that hunting opportunity so that if somebody is hunting a piece or there is extra pressure somewhere, we can just go somewhere else and it's not a big deal. The second side of that is not only are we going to try and back off with the hunting pressure, but if you say hunt the piece next to me or surrounding pieces or whatever, I can assure you we're doing far more for the habitat and for the predator control than anybody else is. So obviously we do that to keep our hunting to the quality that it is, but I also do that to keep the quality of hunting the way that it is, of populations the way that they are for 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and down the road, so that the actual quality of hunting and the health of these populations of birds and other wildlife only continues to get better. I think that's a good spot to kind of lead into the next part of this. If we want to go down that rabbit hole, is just managing populations and habitat. It is, to me, it's so important to be proactive about it. A lot of places in the country are to the point where populations are declining, whether they've been overhunted, there's too much predation, habitat's been deforested or destroyed, or cities have been built, whatever the case may be. And so you're seeing a lot of places that have had limits, bag limits of turkeys, 5, 4, 3, whatever, multiple turkeys, 2 turkeys, backing down to 2 turkeys instead of 3, or to 1 turkey instead of 2. And all these hunters are complaining about it, that they can't shoot as many turkeys as they used to. Well, the reason that you're having to shoot less turkeys now is because we didn't take care of the turkeys that we had. And so there's this push in Michigan to go from one tag to multiple tags, or we have the fall season, which I don't really know that that's always a great thing. And I think fortunately it doesn't get a lot of pressure or a lot of people fall turkey hunting, not as many as what there probably
I don't know very many people fall turkey. I mean, I get a tag every year, but
for me, it's just like, oh, hey, there's a turkey.
Yeah, it's been a slow evening and there's bird.
Sure. But where I'm saying is that any turkey that you kill is obviously, especially in the fall, killing hens, is a hen that isn't ever going to lay another nest. So when it's such a volatile and fragile population, the way that they are with weather and predators, and we might say like, what do you mean there's turkeys everywhere? But all it takes is one really, really harsh winter or one year that there's a ton of predators or a lot of hunting pressure. Because again, our DNR does allow a lot of licenses to be sold. Even though there's only one per person, we can sell a lot of turkey tags. And there are more and more people traveling to turkey hunt every single year, which is great. But these people are coming and killing a turkey, and they're not doing anything else for the population, whether it be here or other people traveling to other states. I think that it's very, very important that if you're going to be, essentially harvesting a turkey, that it's important to be doing, I always say, twice as much minimum for the turkeys the rest of the year, because they've got to survive 330 or 320 days out of the year that we're not hunting them, that I think people forget the importance and how hard those turkeys live. We're the apex predator in the woods. There's nothing that's really trying to kill us. Turkeys have everything trying to kill them all year round.
Do you think we have a potential population problem?
As far as quantity of birds?
Yes,
in Michigan.
like declining, because everyone that I've talked to seems like our turkey population is booming. I know there was a point in time where we really struggled, where that population was at a all-time low, but
we are in the good old days of turkey hunting for Michigan.
It's stupid. Like around here during like off season, I've got 30 in the backyard. Those fields that we were talking about earlier, you drive by every single morning. I look out, probably 15, 20 of them.
Yeah, I think there's no shortage of turkeys, but like I said, all it takes is one bad year or a couple strings of bad years, and next thing you know, you're in rough shape. But that's the reason we have the turkeys we do, is because they've been managed the way that they have been for so long. So if it's worked for this long, why would we change it and try and kill more?
It's a good point.
Now, I'm not going to say that at some point we don't have to say, okay, there's too many and we do need to maybe harvest a few more. But until it gets to that point where they're becoming extremely detrimental either to crops or to the habitat.
Well, realistically, how much detriment can a turkey cause to habitat? Because I know deer, you obviously, like the big one in urban areas is it's eating my plants, it's eating my arborvitae, it's like killing all my hostas. And even in the ag, I mean, field edges are just raped by deer. But turkeys, the worst you have maybe is like during the spring, where they're going down rows and picking out corn.
Right. And so that's where obviously wild habitat, probably not so bad.
Right.
But with agriculture, if you talk to any farmer, they're going to say kill all the turkeys. And I can understand, obviously, a turkey that's, like you said, going right down the row, picking out the bean seeds or the corn seeds or whatever seed it is. Essentially, from a farmer's mindset, you're dipping into that farmer's pocket
100%
and taking money out with every peck. And so now you start looking at, if we harvest a turkey in the afternoon, a tom in the afternoon that's had all day on the ground, 8 hours on the ground in the morning, pecking and feeding, I mean, you'll see their full crop bigger than a softball, 2 softball
it's
sizes.
Wild. I saw that for the first time this year.
And I have some really good pictures of a full crop of seeds. So I'm like, that's one turkey there. Like you said, there's 30 or 50 turkeys in this field every day. Can you imagine?
Well, a few bushel off every day.
Every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand that concern from the farmer's standpoint. The other side of that equation that, again, it's kind of newer to the discussion here, is a lot of these farmers are using those treated seeds.
Yep.
And so there's discussion that it's killing turkeys, causing them to produce eggs with thinner shells.
Interesting.
And so I can't say I'd want to be eating those seeds every day.
There is a product called Avapel that we used to sell, and it was a seed treatment that was just to get rid of birds getting on seeds, and it was primarily for the sandhill cranes, because sandhill cranes will go right down a row and they'll figure out the spacing in which that planter is set to, and they'll know 2 inches from here, I'll find another one. Another 2 inches, I'll find another one. Another 6 inches, I'll find another. They do. And I mean, Avapel is primarily used for them, and we used to sell a ton of it to farmers up in the like northern areas of Michigan and over on the east side.
And that said, we can't shoot cranes here without the depredation tags.
100%.
Which is so sad.
And when you like over on the east side of the state, they're like Saginaw Bay area, the cranes flock like crazy. So when you watch a flock of
thousands,
I've watched a flock of like maybe 150, 200 cranes just come in on a field, and
they're
I've seen
dinosaurs.
I've seen fields of like 1,000, 1,500 birds, and I'm like, that's nuts.
Allegedly, they are the best tasting bird out there.
Ribeye of the sky.
Allegedly,
they are.
You had it.
They are.
Did you? Because wait, I thought even if you're a farmer and you even have a permit to kill them, you can't eat them.
Correct. You have to leave them lay, to my knowledge. But
which is such a waste of resources. That pisses me off. I don't know why the NRC doesn't change that. I don't know if they want to incentivize the permits.
That would be, I think, the biggest thing. Is
that's such a disappointment, though. If you imagine a farmer and you kill 100 sandhill cranes in a year and just let them lay, that is so disappointing.
Yeah, but definitely other parts of the country, it is legal to hunt them, and I have definitely eaten them, and they're delicious.
Let's go.
Very good bird.
Where does it line up in the fowl realm?
I'll typically compare it to being somewhere between eating a duck and a specklebelly. I really think that specklebelly is an incredible table fare. I love eating them, especially if you can keep the skin on. Duck is really good, and I think it's kind of in between. It's a little bit longer breast than both, but typically by the time you trim that silver skin off of the sandhill crane, they end up being a little bit thinner. But
it's red meat, right?
Very red. Very delicious.
That's wild.
I'm trying to remember what the chemical was that they used to spray on seed treatments that would actually stun sandhill cranes, like, and knock them out. To the point where I heard a story one time of some friends. They would travel around the country and they'd build professional horse jumps, and they'd have to travel long distances, so they're always on the road. And they're telling me a story of one time they were driving on the highway and they're watching the sandhill crane fly above them. You know, it's flapping, and all of a sudden just goes and just falls out of the sky and like crashes on the ground. And the guy driving just looks over and he's like, "Did you just see that?" And he's like, "Yep." And it just like tanked on the ground. I was like, "That's a really weird story." Like he's like, "It died midair." Like that's all I can say is it died in the middle of the air.
It's like feeding Alka-Seltzers to seagulls. You've seen that?
I got a video of a goose dying in midair this year while I was scouting.
What?
It was like 1,000 yards away, and I just happened to be filming a flock flying, and just all of a sudden a bird fell out of it. So I don't know if somebody shot it with like a rifle or if it just had a heart attack.
Make sure to get your boosters.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, the back end of that story is when I got into the ag industry, one of my coworkers said like, "Oh yeah, that's such and such chemical." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And it wasn't Avapel, because that's just a deterrent, but there's some other chemical that they would spray on the seeds that when they'd sit there and eat them, they do fine, and then all of a sudden they just knock out. So he's like, the bird didn't die, it just passed out midair. And like I cannot remember for the life of me what that chemical was, but it literally like knocks out sandhill cranes. And okay, so then you where I was going with that originally is you relay that to turkeys, and it's like, yeah, okay, I know some of the seed treatments that like we used to put on corn and soybeans, and it's like, I don't want that crap. Like I wouldn't lick my fingers when I was done treating seeds, you know. And you're gonna sit there and put that in the bird that I'm about to eat. It's like, oh, I don't like that.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's really causing a lot of our health problems too. All the 100%. Pesticides that are being used for seed treatments and pesticides and all these new farming practices.
I will say that, you know, I'd rather die from some random disease caused from a chemical than hunger, but it's still just not good. Like if I can go grow my own food, I'm probably going to go do that. And that also being said, like I'm talking about the chemicals. Like if I see a deer eating on a corn stalk and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's such and such BT corn." Everybody like has an issue with BT corn. Monsanto and all that fun stuff. I have zero issue eating that stuff. I'm like, it's fine. It's not gonna kill you instantly, and it's not gonna kill the deer that's eating it.
Right.
And you eating the deer's meat is not gonna give you any issues either. But like, if you're gonna sit there and like lick the leaves right after you spray them with the chemicals on it, maybe not so good.
Bad deal.
Yeah. And for me, I never thought about that. There is a little bit of a difference between a deer eating corn that's been treated or a deer that's eating genetically modified corn versus like a turkey pecking something out of the ground that has chemical directly on it.
Bad deal.
So hunt your organic fields for turkey.
I'm just also realizing how much I'm tuning out because this is Doug is the only dog that's ever allowed in the PodBunker because
Sorry, Ruger.
I'm just like, I'm so focused on this dog. You guys won't be able to see it because I haven't been talking, but I've just been taking pictures and I've texted like 15 people pictures of this dog just chilling in this chair. Doug is the man. All right, let's
Can we take time out?
Yeah, go for it.
If that's cool.
Get her done.
All right.
Go do your thing. Then we're gonna dive into gear talk. All right, let's talk about Let's talk about habitat management. You had touched on that a smidge. What is something important for us as conservationists to be doing to help that turkey population make it through winter, make it through the off season, have enough food and forage in the spring? What's your knowledge in that realm? Because I have no knowledge. I'm completely oblivious to that.
So obviously, I'm not very old. So a lot of the knowledge that I've got, it comes from other people's experience that I've been able to learn from and surrounding myself with other knowledgeable people. So I'll start by saying that. Excuse me. So the best way to have a better idea of that is talking to biologists, talking to people that, managing habitat and properties is all that they do and that they've done all across the country and have seen it work. So that's the biggest thing with habitat is that you can't expect to start a project and see results immediately because nature takes a long time to cycle. So you can only start by doing something small and then continuing to build off of that. And then over time, you start to really recognize those results. Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 5 years, it might be 20 years. And especially with waterfowl stuff, shifting migrations, you're talking, decades of change. But turkey stuff is a little bit simpler to manage because you're only looking at that small area that turkey lives. I say small, but we're looking at 40-acre piece you're able to do some work on, or a section of land that's a few thousand acres or whatever the case may be. You're not actually looking at a large chunk of a migration pathway. Those turkeys never leave that. So any little bit that you can do to help those birds in those small areas is better than not doing it at all.
What does an ideal turkey habitat actually look like? Because I think that's probably the common misconception that people don't know about is they just assume turkey lives in the woods, it's fine. It's not like a deer. Same thing with deer. Most people that aren't really into deer hunting don't understand what habitat needs to look like between hinge cut trees and bedding and proper food and water and everything. What is it for turkeys?
Well, turkeys are super versatile. You see them in so many different places and different terrains, so they do adapt, but you always want to be able to give them the best places to find food and raise their young in, because once a turkey is an adult, there's not many things that can kill them. There's going to be some that get killed by coyotes or bobcats or eagles. I mean, I've had eagles hit my decoy before, so that's one thing that actually...
While hunting?
Wow. And I had the camera out, but not on. And so it happened so fast. I didn't get that on camera. But that said, that's a small percentage of turkeys being killed. Some are going to get hit by cars or whatever. But the highest mortality rate and window of time that you really have to stack the odds for success for turkeys is nesting and then while they're poults. So... I forget the exact percentages, but it's very, very high mortality rate for nesting failure and very, very high mortality rate for poults by predation, coyotes, foxes, raccoons, skunks and possums with nest raiding, all that stuff. So if you can give the poults a good place to survive their first 3 to 5 months of life, once they make it to adulthood, there's strength in numbers for turkeys. There's always so many eyes looking. They're in good shape. So if you can, a lot of times opening up the canopy, getting sunlight to the forest floor to regenerate growth, where now there's going to be more bugs for them to feed on and more things for those poults to hide in, that's going to be your best success.
That's fascinating. Now, I see guys do a lot of burns too, to create, and whenever you hear about burns, it's usually to create a decent amount of undergrowth, but also it creates primo turkey habitat.
Exactly. So there's two sides to the burning. Not only does it help with the habitat and regenerate growth in more ways than one, re-enriching soil to again, help with that regrowth, but another new thing that's been interesting that I've seen other people studying is a lot of these predators avoid the burns. So you're seeing less raccoons in those areas and less possums and stuff. So it's like,
that's interesting.
Exactly. If you can, again, really, really help those turkeys out by giving them a place that the predators avoid, and it's regenerating growth and, giving them more places to feed, even better.
I never even thought about that. That's really fascinating.
What's the statistics, or like what's the science behind, will one hen lay a nest per year? Or if their nest gets raided, will they go another?
Technically, I think they can have 2 broads a year. I think 2.
Okay.
Like if one fails, I think they can do a second. Geese do anyway, for sure, but I'm pretty sure turkeys can have up to 2.
You ever had turkey eggs?
Mm-mm.
I know it's probably super illegal.
Wild turkey eggs? Probably, yeah.
I just wonder if you ever came across one where it was abandoned and, there were eggs and stuff and they weren't spoiled yet.
Well, abandoned's a tough thing to say because the turkey isn't going to sit on the nest all the time.
That is true. Same thing with goose.
Especially if you bump the nest, obviously it's going to seem abandoned, but a lot of times they're going to come back unless they get bumped from it multiple times.
What are, in your mind, what are some practical things that anybody can do for their land, whether it's a small parcel or a big parcel? What are some proactive things you can do to improve turkey habitat?
I think the biggest and most substantial thing, aside from the actual habitat, is the predator management. So if you can get guys, whether you do it yourself or have people that are good at coyote hunting and good at trapping, or if you can become good at trapping, then you're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of the neighbor because you're providing a safe place for that turkey to live. And the biggest thing with the predators is if you don't stay consistent about that every single year, they're going to continue to reproduce as many or more predators every single year as far as the raccoons and coyotes go, to make sure that there's always raccoons and coyotes there. So you need to continue to trap, up to as close as you can legally turkey season or reproduction time, so that those raccoons and coyotes aren't there to rob nests and kill poults.
It's like the same thing as fawns. I mean, baby turkeys are very fragile.
Mm-hmm.
Very fragile.
I remember as a kid, one time we were out walking through the woods where I hunt now, and we had a whole flock of turkeys just take off in front of us, and all the little poults are running around, and really one just ran straight into the tall grass and just plopped right down. I just walked right up on it, reached down to the grass, picked it up. I was maybe 8 at the time. I didn't know any better than what I was doing, but I was like, I caught a turkey. This is great. And it obviously just let it go, and it took off and it did its thing. But they're an instinctual animal where it's like, there's going to be fight or flight, and there's not going to be very much fight in a little poult. The thing's going to fly away, or it's going to find some space to hide. And it's like, 9 times out of 10, but like there's always going to be that one that just goes and ducks, and then like it's done for. It's not going to take much for a yodi or even a possum at that rate to come in on it and grab it. And that's like when they're still young, like not even like that's post hatch. You talk about a nest raid, that's a completely different ballgame. Like just done, whole nest gone.
That is true.
But just fragile, that's such a tough thing. Like I think it's Stephen Ranella's dad always said, like, never fall in love with a ground nesting bird. They're always going to break your heart. It's like Yeah, probably. Because
It is true. I mean, if you think about it, you'll see a hen with a bunch of turkeys, a bunch of little poults, and then the next week you see them, you'll be missing 4. And then the next week you see them, they'll be missing 2 more. Same thing with goose. Same thing with ducks. It's just the nature. That's something actually that's wild to me is like some largemouth bass will come up and pike and stuff will eat these little baby ducklings. That blows my mind.
And you got to imagine, like, that's why there are so many in a hatch.
True. Because you know you're going to lose them.
Right.
I wonder if we can convince TJ to start fishing with large format duckling bait.
They make lures.
Do they really?
Oh, yeah.
That's funny. Little jitterbugs on top, but they're ducklings.
Little fuzzy butts.
All right, shall we talk about gear? I already said the word, unfortunately, so he knows what's coming.
What he said.
Back to what I said. Let's talk about turkey gear, because every facet of the outdoors and hunting, there is always gear tied to it. Some people hate it, some people love it, but we love gear. What are 5 really practical pieces of gear that before you hit the turkey woods, you will bring with you?
I think turkey hunting is a very, very good place, an addicting place to start if you aren't familiar with turkey hunting or don't hunt at all, because it's a very simple sport. You don't need a lot of equipment. It's not like waterfowl hunting where all of a sudden you've got 17 different decoy trailers and 100 dozen decoys and 37 different types of blinds.
Did you just say 100 dozen?
A lot. I don't actually have 17 trailers, but I'd be sniffing a lot of decoys.
Right.
But either way, when you're able to say, what are 5 things that you turkey hunt with?
For those of you that want to know, 100 dozen is 1,200 decoys.
Yeah, I definitely have that many.
Good gracious.
Anyways,
1,200 turkey decoys on a field.
Is that a good way to call a tom in off of a hen?
Just comes in bricked up. Like, I don't know which one.
I think you would be intimidated. But it really doesn't take a whole lot to turkey hunt, and that's what I enjoy the most about it. Is it is a very simple and intimate sport.
But that's where it makes the gear very fascinating.
Critical.
Because you have very useful tools.
That's correct.
So hit me with them.
So first and foremost, I do think hunting over a decoy does add a very, very large portion to the hunt when you're able to watch that bird interact with the decoy or respond to seeing the decoy and come in, we'll say bricked up. I like that. Where, if it's a mating pair or a posturing decoy.
I was going to say, what have you had the most, that's what I was going to ask. What have you had the most success with? Hen, tom, just a hen, just a tom?
You want me to go crazy with this one?
Yeah.
Every turkey has its own personality.
No kidding. So every situation is different.
So when you're actually scouting the turkeys, I'm observing how they interact and actually kind of sampling what that population looks like. Because if I'm in an area or a properties, whatever, that there's a higher density of toms and not quite as many jakes, you're going to get away with having more aggressive poses and postures than if you were to go into a property where there's, say, 1 or 2 toms and a really good hatch the year before, and all of a sudden there's mobs of jakes. I'm going to call them mobs because that's exactly what they are. They are just young, dumb, and full of testosterone and running around and beating up everything. And turkeys are a strength in numbers game where if it's one tom, even if he was the boss tom at one point, now he's getting a little bit older, those younger toms are going to outnumber him and run him off of hens every single day.
It's kind of the opposite with deer.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
Exactly. And so if I were to go into that scenario where there's a more, we'll say, subordinate or submissive tom because there's more jakes running him off of decoys, running him off of the hens. If I go in there and just throw a hen and a jake decoy, that tom associates that jake with an ass whooping. So he's not going to come in knowing that he's about to get beat up. So a lot of times you're going to end up with a lot more subtle of a presentation, whether it be just a hen decoy or sometimes even no decoys at all and just sitting that bird out because he knows. And sometimes even the decoys draw more attention to you than you want because next thing you know, that mob of jakes comes in and not the tom. And more times than not, that does happen. But if you can find the populations where there's, like I said, 5, 6, 10 toms on a property, they're all fighting each other for the hens, and you're going to get a show with whatever decoys you're able to throw out. Strutters, posturing birds, 3/4 strutters, mating, pairs, whatever. They see that, you're going to watch that head color switch, and here they come.
When you're talking about a posturing bird, what's that?
So there's a couple different posturing poses, but like the bigger posturing jake, we'll say, I hunt over Dave Smith decoys for the most part. Exclusively. I won't say for the most part. That's all we use. They have a posturing jake that is, I guess I'd say, almost full strut, where his shoulders are out, the fan's not up, but the fan's out. It's a very, very big silhouette or pose of a decoy. And so it gives a very aggressive look to a bird that's coming in. So that's where I definitely have learned in the beginning years when I put it out that there were some that would come in and see it and say, oh, that looks a little too aggressive for me. And they mosey on down the line.
Interesting. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah. So the alternative is when you put that in front of the right bird, it is like a switch flips and beeline run, fist fight. Whatever you said with the claws in the beginning.
Yep.
It's going down.
Yep. Exactly. That is wild to me. So decoys are really critical then.
Yeah, they're very critical. And here's where you can take it even a step further is if we're talking about decoying the toms and jakes and creating the right atmosphere or mood for that turkey, not only can you target the jake, but you can also use the hen to your advantage because more times than not, in the springtime, you get guys that are like, our season's too late or our season's too early. All our birds are henned up, all the excuses, whatever. You have to find a way to use it to your advantage. There's always going to be that boss hen, and this is one of my favorite ways to kill a turkey. I always say I've never killed a turkey the same way twice, and it's true. There's always something that throws a loop or a stick in your spokes. But those big boss hens are just as moody, or maybe even moodier than the toms. And so if you can get a hen to start being mouthy with you, if I'm calling it a tom and all of a sudden I get a hen that cuts me off, I'm like, bingo, right? Because now I shifted gears from calling to the tom to continuing to escalate and just keep basically punching that hen in the mouth. As she's yelping at me, I'm going to yelp back louder. And if she keeps yelping louder, I'm going to yelp even louder. And I'm going to yelp faster. And I'm going to respond even more angrily than I had before. Because now she's like, oh, you want to run your mouth at me? I'm going to come and show you who runs this block of woods.
Taking her earrings off. Coming in.
So does that lead into gear number 2 of calls?
Sure. And we'll get there in just a second if it's all right to finish this one. But if all right, well, we're going to talk about calls.
Thanks for tuning Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Yeah.
No. Like, okay, so I've never heard of calling into a hen. So you're fighting with her.
So
you're trash talking.
So we're purring, clucking, yelping, mother clucking, whatever.
Mother clucking.
Mother clucker.
And I'm talking, these hens come in, like I said, you'll hear them purring. They stretch their neck out. They bow their feathers up. And actually, hens can gobble and strut, believe it or not. But these hens will definitely strut around the hen decoy. And my hen decoys take more of a beating than my toms. I swear. They end up with less paint on the heads, which I'll say this, the DSD paint is phenomenal. But after about 1 million pecks and being slapped 100 miles an hour with a wing, eventually they're going to show some wear.
It's called mojo.
I like it. But I'm talking, they are just getting beat up. And so what that does is now you are interacting with a live bird. And so the tom, it's game over at that point. I mean, if he wasn't already sold on the show, you better be ready because here he comes. So I've had a lot of times where I'll have a tom hung up, for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour, and you're just sitting there and he's in full strut back and forth. And it's literally like an invisible line in the sand at 80 or 100 or 120 yards. Excuse me. And he won't cross it and just strutting back and forth, gobbling, strutting back and forth. And then all of a sudden, here comes Miss Sally, boss hen, whatever you want to call her. Comes into the decoys, whether subtly or whether with their mouth just a rolling. And all of a sudden, again, the switch flips, and here comes that gobbler on a beeline for you. And that has been the death of more turkeys than even just calling to them, because they see that going on and they're like, well, if it's good enough for her, there's something going on over here we're checking out. And again, the deal's sealed.
That is wild. See, there's layers to this, and I realized that I was at a very low intelligence level of turkey hunting, but this is making me realize like I'm barely scratching the surface. So let's talk about calls. Box calls, mouth calls, slate call, or what are they called technically? What are the ones with the stick where you scratch? Slate call. Yeah, slate calls.
What's pot call then?
Sure.
Oh.
Same thing.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Now, I get 5 things. Does each call count as one, or does it calls count as two?
We're just going to use that as a category. So your number 1 was decoys. Number 2 is going to be calls, but let's dive into each category. So I want to hear about different kinds of calls, because all I've ever used is the classic box call, and I kind of got into mouth calls a little bit.
I think there are a lot of different options out there for calls, and if you're beginning turkey caller, probably your easiest to use is going to be like a push button yelper or a box call. Just to start.
I've seen the push button ones. I've never used them,
and they work, right? I don't personally use one because I have learned to use better options in my opinion. But if you're just starting out, that's going to give you a sound that sounds like a turkey, and you're going to be able to go and try and call turkey, and it works. But that said, my personal favorite is using a diaphragm call. They're very, very versatile. You can make a very wide range of notes. Again, I can get real loud and fast. You can purr, cluck, yelp, all of the things. You can sound very, very lifelike, especially the more you practice, the better you're going to get. It's frustrating in the beginning, but if you get hung up, there's lots of great resources, YouTube videos, people like me. I'm not a world champion caller by any means, but I can at least get somebody to purr and cluck at least a little bit like a turkey, and then you can learn from there. But don't be bashful. Reach out if you get hung up. Diaphragm calls are awesome to me because it leaves my hands free. So a lot of times I'm running a camera on a hunt. I know I'm not the main camera guy, but it's always nice to get another angle. So a lot of times I'm running the camera with my hands. So if I can still call and run a camera, and especially with turkey hunting, not have to move, it's huge. So they can pinpoint sound so well that obviously you don't want to give yourself away, but sometimes it is necessary to call without moving to, again, kind of seal the deal, keep the interest, get a turkey to stop and get a shot opportunity, whatever the case may be. It's always good to be ready to rock and roll. Box calls are one of my favorites if it's very, very windy, because I can get louder on a box call than what I can with the diaphragm even. And so this sounds like a crazy factoid, but I call the turkey in from what I figure had to be, I think it was a little over a mile away, like 1.2 miles. Dude, was the closest wood block. I dropped a pin on Onyx and it was 1.2 miles to the wood block. Granted, there were other turkeys gobbling, and so it was kind of like that competitive who's going to get there first. But literally right first thing in the morning, I had one gobbling on this side, 2 gobbling behind me, and one I could barely hear him, very, very faint, all the way across not only the field we were in, but there was another field and then the woodlot on the backside. And like, I'm talking full on run where like their chest is shaking, like the T-Rex run, I call it, right? Like they're just like trotting. And he came from there. Another one, I mean, 3/4 of a mile to a mile on a very, very windy day. It was such a faint reply. I could hardly hear him, but I mean, I just cut on that thing as loud as I could, yelping, and got a response. And I will say I don't call that loud right out the get-go in the beginning of the stand, but if it's been 30 or 45 minutes and I haven't heard anything, sometimes I'm not going to get bashful and I'm going to make my presence known, and you might get that response.
Try to reach out to that and touch that area that you might not have hit before.
Exactly. So you're going into that gobbler's bedroom sometimes right in the beginning of the stand. You don't want to scare him off, but as time goes on, it doesn't always hurt to try and get some attention from somebody that couldn't quite hear you in the beginning, especially if the conditions are that. So it was blowing 15, 20 miles an hour. I waited for the wind to lay down just a little bit, cut up on that call, and it was about 20, 25 minutes. I got the timer. When I hear a turkey gobble, I'm going to give them at least 15 minutes before I even think about moving or calling again a lot of times. Sit there, just wait. And patience kills more turkeys than any calling or any hunting style.
I believe it.
So as luck would have it, it was probably 500 or 600 yards to that next rise in between where I had heard that gobble. And 15, 20 minutes later, I just so happened to see there's that red head kind of trotting across the field. Well, that turkey got missed for the third time that season. And the only reason I know it was the same turkey is because he had, we'll call it beard rot or whatever, and only had about a beard that big, and we ended up killing him the last week of season. So I have footage of him being shot at 3 times. And I typically don't hunt the same turkeys that many times, but he just had that vendetta against him at that point where I was like, this one has got to die.
What's beard rot?
Excuse me. To my knowledge, it's actually a melanin deficiency. They call it beard rot because for a long time, they had thought that due to moisture, a lot of times in like swampy climates, they thought that the moisture was causing the beard because it's actually a feather to rot. It grows from a follicle just like any of their other feathers or a hair would, excuse me. But now it's been studied a lot more and they say it's actually a melanin deficiency, so it's causing that beard to not, I guess, grow properly.
Interesting. Huh. That is fascinating. All right. So we go decoys, calls.
So slate call, pot call, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Big tip here. You start getting a turkey that's starting to hang up or getting a little fired up but not coming in. Oh, the old fighting purr.
I was going to say, that's probably the easiest call to get a good purr out of, right?
Oh, boy. You get them fired up. And again, turkey calling is a lot like getting them to get their mood to switch. And when they get fired up, it's game over. So the fighting purr is one of my favorites on the slate call. As long as you can move your hands, that one works out very, very well.
I've seen guys do that with diaphragm calls, and it is the guys that are able to do the mouth calls are artists. It just blows my mind that they'll have one diaphragm call. It won't be like 3 or 4 different times. You watch him and he'll put one in his mouth and then he'll cut, he'll be able to purr. Like they can hit 5 or 6 different calls all from the same diaphragm call. And I don't know how they do it. It's crazy.
So I guess that somewhat covers calls. I mean, you can put locator calls and all that stuff too. That's a whole nother thing, but those are the main 3 I would say that you really want to have.
Okay. Number 3
gear I'm never going to hunt without again is a turkey chair.
Is that just like one of the pads that hangs on your butt and then you sit down, or is it an actual chair?
It's an actual chair. So now there's a lot of really good options out there that are like a camp chair that sit 2-3 inches from the ground.
So kind of like the ones that people have at the beach where they can dangle their feet in the water.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So I spent a lot of years leaning up against a tree, not having a tree to lean up against, sitting on a pad, whatever. It's a long time to sit and not be comfortable if you don't have something like that. So
your butt goes numb fast.
Absolutely. So
especially guys like us with no ass cheeks.
Now
chronically diagnosed with no ass at all.
I always carry a turkey chair for me and all my customers that are hunting with me that day. It's
wonderful.
Mandatory.
Looks like you're walking through the woods, going to a damn bonfire.
Oh, I have pictures of me packing in blinds and chairs and decoys, and I literally look like a pack mule. Seriously.
Sasquatch running through the woods.
I'll have
it's awesome.
150 pounds of gear, 200 pounds of gear, it seems like.
Call him the pack squatch.
I'll show you a picture. I got a trail cam picture of me walking across with the camera, the blind, 3 chairs, full chairs, camp chairs for the blind, 3 decoys, all that stuff, all of the things.
What's your thoughts on blind versus sitting in the open?
The diehard turkey hunters, I'm going to say southern turkey hunters especially, think that it's very, very wrong to turkey hunt from a blind. And I get that inquiry a lot. Well, how do you turkey hunt? Do you hunt from a blind? Because they don't want to turkey hunt from a blind.
To me, it's just restrictive. It creates that barrier between you and the animal. To me, it's like hunting from a box blind for deer.
Yeah.
It seems tainted. You can't see. There's so many blind spots. Like it could sneak up behind you and you have no clue.
Yeah, so personally, if I'm going to go turkey hunting, I'm usually not going to use a decoy, not going to sit in a blind. I'm going to keep it very, very simple. And again, I think turkey hunting is kind of an intimate thing with you and the entire atmosphere. Now, like I already mentioned with being able to hold the attention of the turkey, if I have a kid that's never hunted or has a short attention span or new hunters that aren't familiar with, how to move, when to move, all that stuff, a blind is now a great tool for me to keep the child hunter comfortable or entertained, able to stretch, stand up, whatever the case may be in that scenario, or gives you time. I mean, I've had it where they have come in behind me. I had a kid one time. I said, all right, get turned around. He's behind us. And I had him get shouldered on the gun and pointed at the turkey. And then I opened the door of the blind and he shot it out the back door of the blind.
Oh.
So, and I got it on film. But that just goes to show that if I wouldn't have been in a blind, I definitely couldn't. I mean, I've called turkeys in without a blind where they come in behind you and you're like, well, we're going to just let them walk by because I'm between the hunter and the turkey and I can't get him to turn around and shoot through me. I can't get out of the way, whatever. So when you're in a blind, it definitely offers a lot more opportunity for that. And again, the time as the turkey's at the decoy, you can wait till he turns around and then get positioned better rather than just being set. If it's raining, you stay a little more dry in a blind.
That's true. That's a huge plus.
So I've had another turkey story. Turkey hunter of mine has hunted with me for 5 or 6 years now. Has turkey hunted all across the country. I think the most turkeys they shot in a spring was like 17 turkeys in one spring or something just crazy. But either way, got in camp, and I think this is the first time he hunted with me, actually. Weather was awful. Like, honestly, the worst turkey hunting weather I've ever had. But I had this spot that I was like, I just had this gut feeling that after scouting it and knowing where the birds had been, I was like, this is where we need to be in the morning. First morning of his hunt, he's like, I think we should just sleep in. We're going to ride this weather out. We've got 2.5 more days after this weather's gone. And I'm like, man, I know, but like, what if it comes down to the third afternoon and we still don't have a bird? Like, I'm going to feel bad that we didn't try. So I said, if you can trust me and make this walk across this field in the rain, I'll get the blind set up. We'll be comfortable. And at least we're out there trying. And as luck would have it, the sun came up. We're sitting in this blind, and I'm talking torrential downpour, 30 to 40 mile an hour gusts, like literally raining sideways.
Holding onto the blind.
Literally, just awful. The worst conditions you can ever imagine. I literally cut 5 or 6 trees out of the road on the way out of the lodge just to get out to hunt, because it's about 1.5 miles down this dirt road to get where we were staying. And all these popple trees had fallen into the road. And so I was out there with a chainsaw cutting the trees out to get out in the morning. So we get out, get set up, and he was done at 7:30. We had, I think, 4 or 5 longbeards come in, and it was so windy that you could see the turkeys gobbling at the decoy.
But you couldn't hear them. No way.
So I didn't have my camera, but I filmed it on my phone. And like when the wind would lay down and they'd gobble a little bit, you could just barely hear it. And he shot the turkey.
They just came in by eyesight then.
He shot the turkey. Yeah, there really wasn't a whole lot of calling going on that morning that was effective anyway.
Holy cow.
But shot the turkey at the decoys, and we walked out with a very wet turkey. But
Can you imagine being on the ground, though, without the blind in that situation?
Absolutely not.
Terrible. So you heard it. There are positive aspects of the blinds.
And I love turkey hunting in the rain, I won't lie.
Really?
Absolutely.
I love it.
So that's going to be the, 2 or 3 main points or benefits, I would say, to hunting in a blind, for sure.
Okay. What's number 3 as far as gear goes?
The chair.
Oh, yes, that was 3. 4.
I think a rangefinder is a really good tool.
I could see that.
Again, I don't ask for anybody to take an unethical shot, but it is always helpful to know where that line is, because
it's hard to gauge too. You never know how big your bird is. A big bird close might.
It's not as technical as an archery shot, difference between 20 and 40 yards and missing a deer by a foot. But at the same time, it's nice to know where your pattern's at and where things are. So I'll say rangefinder and binos kind of hand in hand there. It's always important to have good optics.
Optics. Okay.
Oh, number 5, the last one. Again, you could do a lot of things with turkey hunting with those 3 or 4 things, but there's
one piece of gear that you have that you take out with you where you're just like, holy smokes, I'm so glad I have this.
I'm gonna say that the tungsten shot shells, from a hunting standpoint, the guiding not so much because I don't obviously shoot the turkey, but definitely if you are going turkey hunting, I would say invest in the shotgun shell.
Is that why you see shotgun shells that are like $80 for 5?
They're expensive. Yeah, they're going to be $50 to $100 somewhere in there for 5 to 10 shells.
Good gracious!
But here's the deal. You spend. Let's just say we're going to go on a freelance trip to go hunt the Dakotas or go hunt Nebraska, or we're going to drive all the way to Wyoming, California, whatever. That's a lot of cost in travel and licensing and other equipment.
That's true.
We're to the point where we're looking at a $5 shotgun shell, and we're saying we don't want to spend $5 on a shotgun shell instead of spending $2 on a shotgun shell. So to me, it's like, I understand it sounds like a lot of money, but that's the cheapest part of your hunt.
Yeah, it's a pretty small price to pay for the experience. Yeah, that's legit.
And the benefit that you're gaining in effectiveness.
No, I agree. That's legit. You changed my mind.
Easy.
All right, so this will be my final question before we wrap up. Somebody who's completely green in the turkey woods, what is something you wished a piece of advice somebody would have given you back in the day when you were kind of figuring it out?
I think the biggest piece of turkey hunting knowledge is just that they aren't an expendable resource and that we need to do everything that we can to take care of them. And that's really shifted my mindset around turkey hunting because I haven't killed a turkey in a few years. It's so important to me to be able to continue to provide that experience for not only my next year's customers or friends or family, but like I already mentioned, decades and generations down the road. So it isn't even necessarily turkey hunting geared as much as the conservation side of things. As far as the turkey hunting side goes, I'm going to say you definitely don't want to pressure your turkeys too much. If you can continue to build options and scout other places and broaden that horizon of turkey hunting where you don't have to be stuck on only hunting that one bird, when things don't work out, it's really not that big of a deal because that turkey wins. You're able to take a step back and reset and say, well, maybe tomorrow's a better day to hunt this guy or a week from now. But you're able to go and look at other birds and observe how they work. So don't be real small-minded when it comes to that. If something doesn't work out, just use that experience to learn from and apply it to the next one. And next thing you know, you're going to be an unstoppable force in the turkey woods.
That's solid gold.
I like it.
Dude, thanks for coming in and talking turkeys with us. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Well, forgot about Doug. And Doug is sleeping. If I can't see his head. Doug has been the best secondary podcast guest we've ever had here. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We appreciate you. As always, we grow organically. So if you learned something, if this was beneficial in any way, make sure to share the show with somebody. If you go to our Instagram at ataso.outfitters, that's where our link tree is. That will get you to the website, which you can learn a little bit more about us, what we do, all the podcast stuff. These full episodes are on YouTube. If you like consuming your podcast in video format, we drop episodes every single Tuesday. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of those. Doug, do you have any words for the guests?
Just a big tail wag.
Hey, come here. Come here. Come here.
That's it.
That's it. That's all we get. That's all we get.
You know how to translate that?
What is he saying?
He's a pretty quiet guy.
Black Doug.
Well, Doug, we love you. Thanks for coming in. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Don't act like you can imitate him.
We got to go run Doug.
He did.